As I mentioned earlier, approximately 40 players, the most balanced and well-rounded class that we've had since we've been here. It's obviously a big class. You have 28 go out, essentially. You have 28 come in, and so it was a huge class. There were some times during the season, recruiting a year ago, that I was concerned. It's not easy to sign a large class like this, but we were able to get it accomplished, and I'm really excited about getting them in here. And I say that just from the standpoint of without going down the list. I know you guys got all the information off CoachGundy.com on each player, and so I'd be here for 2 hours trying to talk about each player. But you have a quarterback, you have wideouts, you have running backs, you have offensive linemen. We picked up a tight end for the first time in a number of years. You have defensive linemen, you got backers, you got safeties, you got corners, you got a punter. And it's a balanced class. So if anybody has any questions about anything on our 2014 class, I'll answer them right now.
Mike, it's early. Obviously, you've got a handful of guys in here in this class, but you also have last year's class, and not many of them played. You redshirted a lot of them. But can you look at those two classes combined and kind of envision that kind of the foundation those two classes will create in the upcoming years?
You never want to say too much, but you always look and see where you're at. I think it's important. One thing I've learned in doing this now, fortunately for 10 years, is to be able to see where we're at and try to evaluate what we need next year based on what we have this year. Without getting too far out of the box here, recruiting is not a perfect science. And I've said this before to you guys, just like in the NFL, they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on a guy, and then they draft the wrong one. So it's important for our staff, and it's important for me to be able to evaluate who we are and the direction we're going. It's debatable. We could discuss it for a number of a short time here, but over the last 5 years, with the exception of not this year but the last year, even though we lost two games on the very last play of the game, the teams here have been able to compete for a conference championship basically every year. We're in a situation, and this year we failed to do a good job of coaching. We got out-coached at the end of the year, but the team that won our league, Baylor, who had a great year, I don't know how many points we beat them by. I think 20 points or something. But my point is so at Oklahoma State, athletically, our talent level and who we are, the team that won our conference, we still beat them by 3 or 4 touchdowns. So that shows you where we've come talent-wise. Now, as coaches, we have to do a good job of developing continuity, all the things that are important. And I say this to you guys each year, and it's not coaches talk. 13's gone now. 14 has to identify who they are, who's their leaders, what's their identity. And that has to start right now. It's already started in the weight room. And so this class, compared with the last class, should keep us on track to be talented enough, if we do our job as coaches, to compete for a conference championship each year.
Coach, you've got a variety of skills offensively, including the tight end that you mentioned. Does that reflect kind of where you think you might be going offensively, and did you find yourself in the middle of this process kind of having to think about personnel-wise what you needed and where you wanted to go from an offensive standpoint?
Well, it's kind of a dog chasing his tail. And, the recruiting philosophy with most people across the country, but certainly us, is you want to bring skill players in that touch the ball that can make big plays. Because we all know guys that have the ability to make big plays, that touch the football, can change a game, just like what happened in the Super Bowl. The fast guy they handed the ball to, and Harvin, whatever his name is, he touches the ball how many times? 5 or 6 times for 140-something yards. And so you try to get the ball to young men that can make a difference if they touch it. But you also have to be aware of how times are changing with defenses, okay? In our personal opinion, just us, that defenses in this league have gotten better at defending the offenses that were dominating this league for 5 years. Well, we hadn't had the NFL quarterbacks. Those guys are graduated, so that helps some. But we think they're getting better. And so a tight end gives us a different option. It's not going to change what we do, Okay, just like I've said this every year, we're going to run the same plays. We ran them this year, and we ran them last year with 3 different quarterbacks, and we'll run them next year. But a tight end allows us to be a little more flexible in some of the things that we do on offense.
You mentioned you had no decommitments, and I don't know how far you want to go with this, but I counted 7, I think 8 players on your list of signees that were committed somewhere else, and the names weren't small. Mm-hmm. They were, so you picked up guys that made second choices, and you were the one they went to.
Did you get that hat from Russell?
I didn't. I got that when we went out there and played. I've had this a long time. I'm not a front runner.
That's a good-looking hat.
Other than I chose it.
I'd like to have one of those silver jackets. You sell those jackets on the sidelines? How many of those do you think they'll sell now, since they marketed those on the sideline? Anyway, it was an unusual year for us in recruiting in that we had a number of players, and there's a percentage game. You can go back over the years, and you lose 1.5 or 2 a year from August up through signing date, and you never know who those guys are. So it becomes a mathematical situation where you try to keep above the number you can sign, because if one slips, you can fill one in. But you also have to be careful of how many you do that with now, because they changed that rule a few years ago. You can't oversign, and so it's a little more iffy in how you handle those situations. But we had a number of players, and I said this before the bowl, and I said it after, and even all the way through. We didn't have enough scholarships to give out this year to quality players that are deserving of a scholarship that want to be on our team in this class. We didn't have enough. And we've got young men walking on our team that'll be here when we start in the summer that are very deserving of scholarship. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit in a couple years after they develop if they're not contributing in a large way or starting for our team. And it's just I just think the core values of who we are and what we stand for, and the players are our best recruiters, and I think that's why we're in this situation.
Mason Rudolph's obviously already on campus. Is he a guy that you envision competing right away for the starting job?
Well, we'll let all 3 of those guys practice, and obviously J.W. Walsh has been here, and he's the most experienced, and so when we go out there, he'll be out there first. But we have so many reps in the spring that we'll let all 3 of those guys go out and compete. I think there's 4 of them here now. Am I right? I mean, I hadn't even been here. Tyreek.
Oh, yeah, Averett.
Yeah, there's 4 of them now, I think. You guys probably know better than me. But they're out there. They're in the conditioning. Now, we have a number of players running track. Another 4 guys that we have running track that won't be out here with us up until the middle of March, because they're going to be on the track team. And so that would be Tyreek, Webb, Trey Flowers, and Jarrell. Yeah, they'll be with the track team this spring. So we have this new track facility that's awesome, and Diego, our track coach, has had a great relationship with us and has been very involved and instrumental in recruiting some skill guys, some athletes, and guys that can run. And a lot of players like to run track. And so we've been able to incorporate that in what we do now from a football standpoint, spring track and football, and that's going to also help us in recruiting. But those guys, Gina, have been out there. They're working out, and they're doing good. I have not seen it. I haven't been around here. But they go out and throw on their own every day, the same that we've always done. I will say that the strength staff and the medical staff that goes out there to observe and be there, they say when that one guy runs, you have to move your face. Like a tennis match. People do that. They say when he runs by, you have to move your head to watch him go by, which is a good thing.
To follow up on Rudolph, too, based on what happened with Lunt, would there be any reservations on your part about throwing a true freshman out there potentially again?
Well, I'm not in any position to talk about quarterback situation, and I won't until after the Florida State game. I mean, I'm not going to bring it up in the spring. I'm not going to bring it up in the summer. We're going to have those 3 guys that are going to go out and compete. We have a lot of decisions to make. We've got a lot of hard work. In order to get ready to win that game, we got a lot of work ahead of us. And So we'll be evaluating not only the quarterback position, but a lot of different positions in order to get the right people out there to win the first game. And it's going to take a lot of time. And I'm in no position to even give you an answer right now because we haven't had those discussions. They haven't been in meetings. We don't know anything. We're just going to have to let them work through it for the next 6 months.
You said 3. The third is?
Dax.
Dax. And then you got Drew hanging out also. Drew Lego, the transfer from Kentucky.
Yeah, we have a number of young players that are in our program. You know, we have 6 of those guys out there. But there's those guys that'll be kind of conditioned and up and running. And we have a couple of, you bring up a good point, Jimmy. We have a couple of young guys that show some ability, but we don't know anything about them yet till they get out there. Dax, because he's been here and I've watched him throw, and he throws it around pretty good. And for a player like him, this is his chance to go out and play now because he gets to rotate in just like the other 3 guys did when they were here.
You mentioned having to move your head. I assume Tyreek Hill is who they're talking about. Is he a guy that can help fill the void of Josh Stewart just because it seems like he can get the ball in a bunch of different ways?
He's been very successful when he has the ball in his hands. And so I don't think it's any secret for all of us, certainly my opinion, that from a coach's standpoint, if you have a player that can make plays, then he has to touch the football. Do we know how that's going to be right now? We don't have a clue. All we know is we have a player that's really fast and has had a lot of success over the last 3 or 4 years when he was at Gardner in high school when the ball was in his hands. We also have a number of guys returning that can make plays on our football team. And again, I'm here to talk about the class. I don't want to get into all that. But, we have some young receivers here that will be considerably better next year because they grew up a lot this year. They were young. They were just out there feeling their way through. And then, Des Rowland finished up good for us, Rennie, and there's a number of guys. So, I say this every year, and I know people get tired of it and they think that I'm just talking, but I'm as excited now as I ever have been about this team and about preparing and the hard work that we have in front of us.
Not in relation to the competition in the spring, and I'm absolutely certain you're not going to go out on the limb I've planted myself on with Rudolph, but what you saw of him and evaluating him to sign him, talk about your thoughts as you were evaluating and deciding whether you were going to offer him as the quarterback in this class.
Well, it was a long time ago that we offered him. But we're trying to find young men that have great leadership skills. They'll play unselfish, not draw attention to themselves, to where the team will rally around them. And we've been very fortunate here. The quarterbacks that we've had here in the years past, all the way back to Zach Robinson, and moving forward, the guys that we've had here, we've played 4 of them, or I guess over the last few years, have all been good people, and the players liked them. And that's first. If you don't have the ability to throw it and run it a little bit, then we're probably not going to get to that point. But if we get to that point and you're somewhat self-centered and you don't want to be a team player and all that, then I could be wrong, but I don't have any interest in them. And they may not have any interest in us either way, but we have to have young men that want to lead and show up early, and they got to be tough. I tell the team this every Saturday before the game. Quarterback has to be the toughest guy on the field. He's the only guy that gets hit and can't hit back. Everybody else gets a chance to hit back. He just has to stand there and get hit. I wasn't a great science student or anything, but in the law of physics, if you're standing there and get hit all the time, eventually can wear on you. And so those guys have to be the toughest guys. That's very important. And that's what we look at. And next year we got to pick up a couple. We have to pick up 2 in this next class. As I said, I'm excited about watching them all play and see how they develop. You can't predict how they're going to come out. It's almost impossible to predict how they're going to compete early in their career.
You mentioned the run of the pass. He can spin it.
I haven't seen him since he's been here. Tape can be deceiving. Honestly, the little bit that I saw this year, because we made all of our evaluations on him prior to the season, I was flipping through the channels and saw that All-Star game he played in. That was the only time I've seen him play this year.
I saw him throw out here on Martin Luther King Day. Hill was here too. It was kind of impressive because there are like 5 or 6 guys, and there's no school. It's Martin Luther King Day. They can be going to a movie, doing whatever, and
well, that dedication has to take place. You're not going to have success in at this level in college football if guys won't do it on their own. We don't have enough time in the 20-hour rule and the time that we're limited to coaching. We don't have enough hours to get them ready to play. They got to do it on their own.
The recruiting class is not quite finished in that you got to recruit a line coach. How's that going?
Good. Like to accomplish it in just in a few days.
Special teams coach as well. You got to find somebody to do that.
Well, we have a number of young coaches that have gotten jobs. Our graduate assistants have moved on and have gotten other jobs, and we've been very fortunate here. We've had quality coaches, and I said this, that graduate assistants used to be a 22-year-old that just got out of college. It was just feeling his way through. These guys now are 26, 27, 28. They're married. They're mature. They're coached. They can coach on the field. They're ready to coach. So we've been fortunate enough. I watch games like you guys do, like late at night. I'll try to turn a game on or something, or in the off season, and I see guys on the sidelines I forgot even worked here, and they're out there. So we've got a few spots to fill, and certainly looking forward to getting the offensive line coach in.
To go off of his question, was Wickline ever someone you considered for the offensive coordinator position when it's come
I
up in
have
the
no
past
interest
couple
in talking about any of that right now. There's not anything that would be productive that we could talk about. Joe and I had a great relationship here, and he was here with me, I think, 9 seasons, and very instrumental in what we accomplished here. Joe has to speak for himself, but he made a decision based on his career and where he was at in his age and his life. And sometimes when you're at a place as long as he is, 10 years, give or take, guys move on. And so we had a great relationship, and I'm very thankful for what he did for us the time he was here. But one thing that is always a delicate issue is when you go back, I guess, a number of years here, as soon as they took Fedora, after his second year here, when you start having success and guys on your staff are good coaches, they all want to be the coordinator. And I've said this a number of times, I should say, that there's guys now on our staff that could be coordinators. But I have to determine what I think's best for Oklahoma State football for whatever reasons. And it's not as easy as just moving a guy into that spot. There's a lot of other issues, in my opinion, that have to that go through the thought process of what's best for the future of Oklahoma State football. And so anytime you're in that situation, as you know, athletes and coaches all have big egos. And that's one of the most difficult things to swallow. I'm not even talking about Wickline now. I'm just talking about broad in general. And so the management of a staff of men who are all good enough and they're all qualified and they all have personal goals, in my opinion, is one of the most difficult things to do as a head coach, is to keep the right people, the quality people, and the chain of command in order to have success. And it's never perfect. There's always mistakes made. You try to do the best to overcome them. But with Joe, and I haven't really sat down and talked to him, he's keeping his place over here. I sold him the land. He lives over there with me. And so I'm sure I'll catch him and talk to him. He's busy with his recruiting. We were busy. But I haven't really had a chance to sit down and talk to him. But for the most part, it's all water under the bridge anyway. But I will take time to thank him for what he's accomplished here. And we came in just, with not a whole lot, and have grown to a lot now. And he's been a part of that. And that's just the way it is. You guys are in the same situation. I don't know in your profession, but if ESPN wants you to write for them and you want to do it, and you've been working for somebody for a number of years and you just want to change and you think it's best, or you get a promotion or whatever, you do it. It's just in our profession, everybody talks about what we do more than what people do out there if they change jobs in the insurance business or the sales business. And I'm okay with that. But that's the truth about Joe Wickline.
Last 1 or 2 questions, and we'll do it all in here as opposed to a walk-off. So if you have last 1 or 2 questions, then go ahead and do that.
Mike, because the rules changed and it opened it up for graduate assistants and support staff to be more active and help out in recruiting with the rules, a guy's name who came up repeatedly in several areas was Eric Henderson. Can you talk a little bit about how he was able to really kind of help out? And even his alma mater, you signed 2 kids from Edna Carr in New Orleans that I know they came over to camp, but that's his alma mater.
There's certain geographical locations in this part of the country that if there's a coach that's from there and has a history there, he can get his foot in the door a lot quicker than even a head coach. Not that a head coach is any good at it, but he's from there. You know, he's walked those streets. He's walked those halls. He's lived their life. He can speak their language for the most part. And you see that in certain places across the country. And some young men, and I think he's 30 or 31, so he kind of falls in that category. Some guys can market themselves and sell their product. Some guys can't. It's no different than the people out here selling vacuum cleaners. Some guys can sell them like crazy, and some guys are good guys, but they can't close the deal. And he has an ability to attract people. They like him. The coaches like him. They trust him. They know him. The people there like him. The counselors, the teachers, and for that reason, he's able to have success. And he got a lot of players up here to camp in the summer. He has buddies he grew up with that are coaching down there. They drive him up here because they're his buddy, and they let you get your foot in the door and get started.
Another kind of staff member that people might not know, Benny Tonga. With you guys got 2 Polynesian players last year. With last year's class, you got 2 with this class. What kind of impact has he made?
We were close to getting a couple more this year too.
Yeah, and like has that been something?
Benny messed it up. Benny messed it up. We served the wrong food at the recruiting meal. No, we're hiring another Polynesian guy. Should be here in a couple weeks. So we'll have 2 on our staff. And Benny did a tremendous job, very similar to Eric, in that recruiting and what we do, what y'all do every day. Everything's about relationships and being upfront and honest, and people can trust you. Sometimes you can't give them all the information you need, but Benny knows everybody in his world. I gave him a hard time about it. I said, everybody that you bring up is a cousin of yours. And honestly, he's helped us a lot. And I'm fascinated by that style and what he's been able to do in recruiting. And I get a big kick out of going on home visits with them in their culture and bringing them here with our players, and it diversifies who we are. And I've said this a number of times, but college football breaks down a lot of barriers. And I get so much enjoyment out of watching. I tease Parker Graham and Brandon Webb. You know, those guys showed up here when they were 5 years ago as freshmen, and Brandon's from Wausau and kind of a city kid, and Parker's from out there in the sticks, not the sticks, but outside of Joplin area. And they became best buddies, and they were inseparable all the time. And then they blamed each other whenever they busted a protection for 4 years. And so what Benny's been able to do, and the other young man that we're going to hire in a couple weeks who's a Polynesian background, they are going to continue to build relationships with young men that could potentially come to school here and help us out. And so it's been educating for me. It's been interesting, but I have a great interest in trying to explore options such as what we've done with Benny, and it's neat for me. I enjoy that part of recruiting.
You mentioned that some home visits you went on, it was just a completely different world. Is there an example of something?
Well, it's not what you would be accustomed to from, it's a different culture, but it's interesting. And I think what I really like about it, without getting in great detail, is the very most important thing that I've learned from them is their family. They're like this. You're not breaking their family up. Well, that's what we're trying to accomplish here. So you bring young men in that the very most important thing is their family. And the ones that I've gone on home visits to, they have large families, and they take care of their people. And there's a genuine love and compassion in their family. So the way that we're all raised and the values that are instilled in us, when they come here, then that's going to spread amongst our staff, our players. And I think it can only help our football team. And that's what I get out of being on the home visits with their families.
I know the Gundy has become very popular, but you get to the point where you've got enough Polynesian culture players But you might want to invest in some haka lessons.
Some what?
Haka, learning the haka.
Well, that and rugby. And
You're too old
you know what
for
we
rugby.
did? I tell you what we did. I don't mind telling you guys this. At our recruiting meals, we served short ribs, and they season them up, and they're real sweet. And a certain kind of chicken that is kind of what would be a menu, and it was funny. We had a number of people, and some people of that background, and myself and all the other coaches and all the other people, they were eating all their food. They liked it better than the other food. And so it's going to become a part of our menu with Rob Glass, and he does our nutrition with our training table, our restaurant for our players. And it was the first time we had done it, and there's a menu. I'm sure y'all can call somebody and they can tell you what we served. I don't know what it all was, but it was really good. And that's just a part of, diversifying who we are, and all of us kind of opening our eyes up to a culture that's a lot of fun to be around.
Trent Carter's got a good sweet and spicy ham glaze too.
Mm-hmm. Sure does.
Any personnel stuff we should know? Medical red shirts, new scholarship players, guys that left the program, anything?
We have put a number of players on scholarship that were walk-ons. And I probably should have brought that information up here. I think 4, but I don't know because I've been gone. That's the phone calls and trying to get it all set up. And we were busy this week doing several things, and we really pursued the walk-on aspect more so than ever. So I didn't have as much free time this week as we usually have. Plus, I'm trying to get in touch with guys to hire a coach, and so not trying to make everybody feel sorry for me, but like yesterday. The reason I didn't have a press conference yesterday is because, one, there was 2 or 3 players we were unsure of, and I didn't want to get up here and then not be able to talk about them if we were able to secure them. And then I had 2 or 3 things going on with our offensive line position that I had to be involved in, and that was the only time I could do it. So I knew I would be distracted and not really function and be able to pay attention to you guys and ask your questions. So that's why I moved this to today. But anyway, there's 3 or 4 players that we were able to put on scholarship this spring, and we can get that list for you. That'll give Gavin something to do today. He can secure that list and get that to you guys, or put it out on CoachGundy.com or whatever. Rod Johnson takes care of all that.
Spring game picked out yet?
We haven't. I've got some rough days for practices and what we're going to do. We haven't set everything yet, so. We'll put that out in 10 days. Next week, I've got to get a line coach hired first. And then I've got to start hiring some of these other coaches, younger coaches. I got to get that taken care of because, as you guys know, we start spring ball here basically in a month, right? I don't know when spring break is, but it's always the week before spring break. So, it feels like we just finished and we're going to be back at it. So I have to secure that first, Jimmy. Those coaches take care of those players that are here now, and then move into those dates. So probably a week to 10 days.
Good.
Everybody good?